Okay, so in this second section, what I want to do is turn a little bit more towards the book. Again, I don't want to reference, I don't want to walk through the entirety of the book. You can read it yourself, or at least Tasha can. Maybe other you guys can't, but you can read it yourself. I do want to talk about kind of what led me to write the book, and then 3 of the 9 virtues that make up the fruit of the Spirit that I had either a uniquely good or a uniquely bad time writing about. To understand why I wrote the book, I want everyone to look in their scriptures with me at the very obvious text, Galatians chapter 5. Let's look at Galatians 5. Galatians 5, as you know, is where we get the fruit of the Spirit, is where we hear Paul's list of virtues here. But I want to start in verse 18 and read this little paragraph here. Let's read this together. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other to keep you from doing the things you want to do. But, verse 18, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now, the works of the flesh are evident. Here's what they are. The works of the flesh are sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and in case that wasn't enough, Paul ends it with this, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things as these there is no law. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. So I'm reading this passage, and it kind of hits me. Not all of them are pertinent to the conversation, but what I began to bemoan, if I can use that word, is there are times when I look out at the church's conversations, whether it's about politics online, or with one another in the church, or infighting and division. What began to be clear is there are moments, if we're being honest, there are moments where the church's tone and temperature sounds much more accurately described by some of the words in the list that are the works of the flesh than they are by the virtues which make up the fruit of the Spirit. Now again, not all of them, but think about this. Words like idolatry, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalry, dissension, divisions, envy. If we're honest, there are times where the church's tone sounds a lot like that, not gentleness, kindness, self-controlled. So I began to think about a diagnostic question. What does my speech sound like? When I talk to my elders, church members, my non-believing family, friends, when I post on social media, does the things I say sound more like envy and division or gentleness and self-control? It is not an overly brilliant question. It's not meant to be. It's meant to pierce. It's not meant to get lost in all of the nuance, but ask, do I sound like a Christian? And the simplicity of the question is actually where I found the brilliance Because as I looked around, the answer was often no. So I started working on this. I am one who found a lot of joy in theology. And it like killed me. Have you ever shown somebody, like this is such a silly example, it's not in my notes and I always get in trouble doing this, but have you ever showed somebody like a music song that you love or a movie you love and you're like, oh, you gotta hear this, it's amazing, it's like so good, and then you play it for them and like, yeah, that's good. And you're like, no. You're a bad person. Get better and listen to it again because this song is amazing. That reaction was not strong enough. And then you show them again and they're like, yeah, I get it, it's fine. You're like, oh my word, I'm going to set myself on fire. This is how I started feeling whenever I began talking about, like, isn't theology amazing? Like, God spoke to us. He wrote 66 books. It's crazy. You can just pick it up and read it. You can, like, think about them whenever you want to. You can go read church history with some of the smartest Christians who have ever lived. You just do that whenever you want to. And then I met in the evangelical church often with like a, yeah, that's good. Like, no. You don't understand. But then it went from like, yeah, that's good, to like, hey, I've seen people go down that road. And it often doesn't end well. And so it wasn't just a like, yeah, it's fine enough, but maybe it's bad. And then it's something you love not being not just appreciated, but used for evil. And I just wanted to be a small voice to say, it doesn't have to be like that. And so what I wanted to do was ask, actually, can the theological life, thinking about God, thinking about all things in relation to God, can it be the thing that cultivates the fruit of the Spirit? So then in some ways, this is kind of like a reverse theological virtues book. If you ever read like a theological virtues book, they're going to tell you, when you do theology, be kind and be good, be loving. I wanted to ask kind of the reverse question. Could doing theology well actually lead to those things? Could theology lead to love? Can theology lead to patience? Can theology lead to gentleness? I'm convinced by virtue of the scriptures, the answer is emphatically yes. In fact, one of the things that's often pointed out, rightly so, about the list of virtues that make up the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5 is it's singular. It's the fruit, not the fruits of the Spirit. You do not get to buffet style your virtues in the Christian life. You don't get to say, yeah, I might be a jerk, but I'm patient. No. It's all of them. And I'm convinced theology done well, a life spent contemplating God and all things in relation to God, will cultivate the fruit, singular, of the Spirit in your life. Now, I wish I could talk about all 9 of them. They're amazing. Some of them, writing about it, it's just an exercise in conviction, because you're like, why am I writing on patience? I have no credential here. Some of them I felt deep love. And so as I was working through, I chose these 3. I've spoken on this book a lot, and I like to change up which ones I talk about. And so this room, maybe you might hate this choice, but these are the 3 I've chosen for us to talk about. I want to talk about the fruit that is love, patience, and faithfulness. Those 3 of the 9. Okay? Let's start with love. I would argue, and do argue in the book, that the ordering of the fruit of the Spirit doesn't matter except for the first and the last. I think love is intentional and self-control is intentional. If you have self-control, you probably don't have any of the vices that make up the works of the flesh. So I think Paul ends with self-control on purpose, and I think he begins with love on purpose. I think he begins with love because it's the first fruit. He's even going to go to say in this same book, those who love their brothers and sisters have fulfilled the law. But watch out, because those who are envious of their brothers and sisters will bite and devour them. So how could theology lead us to be loving people? Well, I'm glad you've asked. And to explain it, I want to teach you a theological doctrine. Okay, can I do that? Let's get a little theological for a second. Some of you are well-versed in this doctrine. You've heard about it. It's great. Some of you might have never heard it. And I hope there's some of you in the room. I want to teach you about the doctrine called divine simplicity. Not a doctrine you hear about every Sunday, but it's a doctrine I think that has a lot to do with love. The doctrine of divine simplicity. Divine simplicity is an attribute of God. And in its most basic form, divine simplicity just says this: God is not composed of parts. Rather, he is his attributes. Let me give you a wildly dumb example of what I mean. If one of you right now, please do not do this. If one of you right now came up here and cut off my left pinky, weird illustration, give me grace. If one of you cut off my left pinky, and it was this whole ordeal, and I don't know, you're disciplined from your church, and I have to go to the hospital. I'm assuming you'd be disciplined from your church, because come on. But I go to the hospital, and we're too late. We can't put the finger back on, and I just have to live the rest of my life with 9 fingers. The reality is, this is the dumbest sentence I'm going to say tonight, but here it is. The reality is, a 9-fingered Ronni is still Ronni. In losing my left pinky, I didn't lose my essence or my identity. I'm still me. Why? Well, it's because we are complex creatures. We're made up of tons of parts, and no one part of us is equal to our essence. I am not my pinky. I am not my hair. I am not my legs. I'm not even my heart. You can take that out and give me somebody else's, and I could still be me. God has nothing like this. There is nothing in God that you can cut off. Because God is not 10% love and 20% holiness and 30% that and 15% that. And if you get the right ingredients in the right order, voila, you have divinity. That is not how God works. God, this is important, God does not have attributes the way that I have fingers. God is his attributes. He doesn't have holiness. He is holy. He doesn't have love, but as 1 John 4 says, he is love. We have love. We can grow in it. We can shrink in it. Our love waxes and wanes, depending on how obnoxious we find another person to be. Our love might be paused for a minute. We are fickle in our love. God is not, because it's not an attribute he has. It is his very essence. All that God is like this. God is beauty. He doesn't have it. He is it. So the next time someone tells you beauty is in the eye of the beholder, you could say, no. Beauty is in the essence of the Lord. And things are beautiful in so much as they participate in him. It is not subjective, it is objective in the triune God. But God is love. He is holy. He is good. He is beauty. So then, imagine a world in which theology is the study of God, who is love and doesn't have it, but is it, the theology of God and all things in relation to God, and your pursuit of that activity makes you a jerk. If beholding the one who isn't equipped with love, but is it, makes you unloving, you're doing it wrong. It's as simple as that. You're doing it wrong. You will become like that which you behold. And the one we behold in theology is love. 1 John 4:7. So if your beholding makes you unloving, something is significantly wrong. It could be one of many things, but it's wrong. So I'm convinced, insomuch as theology helps us see even a little more clearly the one who is love, we will, by beholding that, be transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. So yes, theology done well can make you loving. All right, there's the first one. The second one, patience, my least favorite chapter to write in the book. And the way that the Lord worked on my heart in this chapter was like, oh man, I hated it. Is he good for it? But man, I hated it. It was not a fun process. In fact, I want to take you to a point of me writing this book. I'm sitting there in my basement in Kansas City, and I have the title of the chapter there, like patience. And my cursor is just mocking me. Like, it's just blinking like, you have nothing to say here, you impatient buffoon. And it's just every second, just like, what are you going to say? What are you going to say, you hypocrite? What are you going to say? And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to write this chapter. And as I was sitting there writing this book, my wife was on a sofa next to me, and she was doing a devotional, and she was like so godly, and I'm having this like existential meltdown. And then she says the phrase that I needed to write the chapter. She says, "Oh, why is this so hard?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was doing a Read the Bible in a Year, and she went where Bible in a Year programs go to die, which is the book of Leviticus. And so she's reading the book of Leviticus, and she's a few chapters in, and my wife really she hates not understanding. So she really wants to understand the book before she moves on to the next chapter. And it was like a moment of real transparency. She was just like, "Why is this so hard?" And it hit me. It's good that it's hard. It doesn't feel like it sometimes. My wife was like, "Shut up. That's not true right now. Why don't I understand this? I've been a Christian for like 10 years, 20 years. Why doesn't this book make sense?" And I thought, whoa. Actually, what the Lord is doing to me right now with this blinking cursor is what I need to write about. What the Lord does in the process of developing wisdom is often the goal. It's not mastering Leviticus or figuring out all your theological P's and Q's, but it's the kind of cultivating and chiseling work that he does when you feel that in your soul. Why is this so hard? And what hit me was, theological wisdom isn't microwavable. And it might be the very thing I need to develop patience in my own life. Like the phrase "administer of reality" was really significant for me, I want to give you another one that was significant. This comes from a theologian who's written a ton on like doctrines of creation and whatnot. But he once said, his name is Matthew Levering, he once said that the right posture of a Bible reader or a theologian, the right posture for us, for those who want to love the Lord with our mind, is the limp of Jacob and the awe of Moses. That phrase might not hit you right away, but it's real beautiful. The limp of Jacob and the awe of Moses. Let's think about what he means by this. What he means by this, you have two stories there. You have Genesis 32, right? That's Jacob wrestling. And then Exodus 33 with Moses atop Mount Sinai. And let's think about what happens in both of these pericopes real quick. Actually, let's just flip there. If you have a Bible, just flip really quickly to Genesis 32. We'll just read this one because I've already referenced the Exodus 33 passage. But look at Genesis 32 and let's look at verse 24. Genesis 32, 24. You might be familiar with this story. It's a fascinating one. Do not ask me what it means. I just don't know. Verse 24. And Jacob was left there alone, and a man wrestled him until the breaking of day. And when the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then the man said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." And this is the best phrase right here. But Jacob said, "I will not let you go until you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." And then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Okay, this little line here, this gives illumination to the notion of the limp of Jacob, because you probably have felt this before. Often, your Bible reading isn't this like utterly sophisticated academic process where you go through this really intellectual theological method and you come out with this amazing biblical conclusion, but it often can sound like this: "I'm not looking away until you bless me. I'm not letting go." Or at least it should. When you come up against those passages that pick up that, "Why is this so hard?" Keep looking. Keep looking. Do not let yourself become distracted. Have a depth of soul that can look and look and look and have this kind of audacity to say, "I will keep looking until you bless me. Until you let go of the meaning here, I won't look away." And it might take 5 years. It might take 50 years. But keep looking. And in theology, if you have this question of mind, this wrestling of soul that won't quite relent, wrestle it. Press in. You're not going to find all Christian wisdom overnight. You just won't. Give yourself grace and keep wrestling and say, I'm staying here until the blessing lets itself go. But here's the deal. If you have that kind of posture, I won't look away until I see the beauty. If you have that kind of posture, you will not walk away with a swagger, but with a limp. In fact, I'm convinced, if you want like a real quick red flag of a Christian thinker, is as if they hold themselves with a lot of swagger and confidence. Like, I'm not sure they've wrestled. Because it seems like when you wrestle, your hip gets disjointed. And the posture is one of a limp, not one of self-confidence. So we hold on and we say, I'm not letting go, God, until you let me see you. He might dislocate your hip in the process, and that's okay, because it doesn't stop with the limp of Jacob. It goes to the awe of Moses. If you put in the work, that will lead to your hip being disjointed. It will go from the limp of Jacob to the awe of Moses, the story of Exodus 33 that we've already talked about. When Moses was face to face with God, whatever that means, and he descends the mountain and he's radiant. That is the awe of Moses, a kind of awe that others who might see you will say, put on a veil. And we're with Paul who says, no, with unveiled face, I will behold the beauty. I put in the work to get the limp, and now I want to see the face. And I think this kind of a life, where we pursue the limp of Jacob, which equals the awe of Moses, will develop patience. Now, it's not a 5 ways to be a more patient man. I don't have that for you. I wish I did. I would have used it a lot by now. Don't have that. I don't have 10 ways to be a more patient woman or a more patient parent. I don't have that. Your kids are going to drive you crazy often. I don't have the here's the silver bullet. Here's the one verse. If you memorize, you're patient. What I have is develop the kind of soul that can actually see beauty. If you do that, you'll probably be patient, or at least more than you thought you could be. All right, last one. Faithfulness. How are we doing on time? We okay? Faithfulness. Faithfulness was one that I'm a nerd, so I like to keep everything super organized. I'm systematic through and through. That's why I became a systematic theologian. So I have these really nerdy Evernote files that I keep all of my book drafts in. And faithfulness was the Evernote file where it took me the longest to get stuff going. Now, faithfulness was a weird chapter because I was in Florida with Megan and Josh. I sat down at a coffee shop and I was like, I have to at least get 500 words on this chapter. And I left the coffee shop with the chapter done. That has not happened very often in my life. Maybe it happens in your life. If so, tell me your secrets. It was just like when the idea came, it was amazing. And I was so thankful for it. But I was like, how does theology lead to faithfulness other than a quick Jesus juke now you know the answer, so obey them. But I wanted something deeper than that. And I found it. I found that the deepness I was looking in reading the book of Joshua. So if you have a Bible, open with me to the book of Joshua, just after the first 5 books. Look at Joshua chapter 4. And look with me at verses 1 through 7. So to give you some context, the Israelites are moving into the promised land, and Moses has just died due to unfaithfulness, actually, and Joshua gets to be the one to lead them into the promised land. So they've just crossed the Jordan. That's what's happened. They've just crossed the Jordan. And look at what it says in verses 1 through 7. When all the nations had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Take 12 men from the people, from each tribe, a man, and command them, saying, take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight." Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, "Pass before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you with a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you." This is the part that I really loved. "And when your children ask in time, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them, that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. And you might read this and think, okay, that's not clicking. Whatever clicked for you is not clicking for me. And it's honestly not overly brilliant. But as I was reading the passage, I love this idea. Maybe it was because we were about to have a child ourselves. But I love this idea of the stones being a memorial so that when the children ask, hey, what do these stones mean to you? Could you imagine being a parent in that moment who got to see the inheritance of the promised land? Right? Think like all the wilderness you had gone through and your parents have gone through. And then you get to be part of the generation that sees it, that goes through this wonderful journey, and you cross the Jordan into the promised land of flowing milk and honey. And it's the pinnacle of your life. And then your child, 40 years later, who wasn't there, sees this little memorial, these 12 stones, and says, what does this signify? Can you just imagine the parent being like, man, I wish you could see what God did. The way he came through for us. What he brought us through to cross the Jordan. These 12 stones might just be stones to you, but man, the weight of meaning they hold in my soul is more than I could convey. It's not exactly the same parallel, but there is something about raising children when your children begin to ask, hey, Dad, what does it mean to be saved? And the question might kick up in you something that was kicked up in the Israelite dads of that day, where my daughter Finley might say like, why? She asked me this in the kitchen just a couple months ago. She said, does Jesus dying or Jesus being raised again more important? And I thought, yes, it's here. And there is something about doctrine that can become a stone of remembrance. When I say a word that might just be a word to most people, but to you, when I say like justification, that you were once dead in your trespasses and sins, but God, being rich in mercy, made you alive in Christ. So your story isn't one from being bad to good, but dead to alive. You've gone through that journey and crossed the Jordan so that when someone says, what is justification? You might say, oh man, it's hard for me to even convey what that word means to me. Because it's not a mere word, it's my story. It's my history. I was the dead one. It's not an abstraction. It's my days. And this is where the church comes in. Because for our stones, these doctrines that we can stack on one another to remind ourselves the Lord is faithful and He will deliver us across the Jordan. When we do that, it's not just our children who are asking and need to be reminded, but one another. We, as the church, are the ones who are walking arm in arm until we cross the Jordan, making sure that nobody, like Moses, dies on the bank of the promised land, but actually gets in. So we can say to each other, don't forget that rock. You want to lie down right here on the pasture and die, don't you? Keep going. Get in. Cross the Jordan. Don't forget the rock. Don't forget union with Christ. Don't forget justification. Don't forget the beatific vision. Don't forget election. Don't forget imputed righteousness. Don't forget, these aren't just words, this is what He did for you. And they might be a stone of remembrance, 12 high. That's enough for you to remember that God has been faithful to you. So now you can be faithful to Him and keep going. I think recounting theology, not just the intellectual definitions, but the beauty they hold, will help you be faithful. So let me end this second session with a quick little encouragement. A small challenge, a small call, not overly brilliant, but let me just read this for you. No matter how much time I spent planning 2 sessions, I can't tell you the beauty that is theology. I can't tell you all of the depths of Christian teaching. I can't tell you the beauty that we have codified in our creeds. I can't tell you all of the glory that we have in our catechisms. I can't tell you of the faith handed down once and for all in 2 40-minute sessions. What I can do is say this: come and see. Come and see. There's more beauty to behold than you could imagine. You will not see it unless you live a theological life in some way. If your soul longs for wonder, come and see. If your soul longs for stability, come and see. If your soul longs for beauty, come and see. If you have that deep existential feeling, there's more than this. There is. Come and see. Practicing Christian theology involves your whole life. It takes a curiosity that knows when and how to ask why, and then when and how to say, wow, I want to know more. Why is it like this? Why has God done that? Why is He like this? It takes an obsession with beauty that takes a certain kind of formed soul that can actually somewhat drown out a loud world and focus. It's going to take habits, like intellectual habits and habits of community, habits of reading, habits of prayer. All this to say, theological wisdom is not microwavable. It's a lifelong journey. There will be highs and lows. There are frustrating moments when you want to scream, why doesn't this make sense? And then there are those moments when the light turns on and your heart gets set on fire. Like Jesus when He opens the disciples' eyes after the road to Emmaus and their hearts burn within them. There are those moments, and they will sustain you. There are times of correction and times of being correct. The journey is wild, it's adventurous, it's maddening, and it's often very mundane. And it's all rolled into one beautiful journey, and I just want to be one small voice telling you it's worth it. Come and see. Let me pray for us.